Good evening and a very warm welcome to this Founding Fuel Ask Me Anything, AMA as we call it, with V. Ravichandar and Shivendra Singh Dungarpur, both stalwarts from the business of arts space and with very, very strong, interesting credentials. And you both of them don't need introductions, but you've already read about the work that Ravi's done more recently with the Bangalore LitFest, which is into its 12th or 13th year? 12th year?
This was the 13th year.
13th year. My bad. And he's, of course, done many others, which we can discuss, which is the BLR Habba more recently, and the Bangalore International Center as well, which are useful experiments to think about. Shivendra also has a very, very interesting, compelling portfolio. Apart from the 10-year journey at the Film Heritage Foundation, where he's kind of restored several masterpieces and tried to almost single-handedly save India's film heritage and restore that. He's also more recently taken on as director of the Mumbai MAMI Film Festival, and all the work that you've seen with the Raj Kapoor centenary celebrations, the film festival, is also thanks to much of the work that he and his team have put in. So wonderful to welcome both of you, gentlemen. We've got a very interesting audience that's kind of joined us. Many of them have experience in curating cultural festivals of the kind that we're interested in going deeper. Film related, musical, literary. So it covers a fairly wide gamut, and I think they'd be deeply interested in listening to what both of you, Ravi and Shivi, have to say. We're trying to kind of keep this very conversational. It's like an adda. There will be questions from our audience. Some of questions have already come in, and we'll, I'm guessing, hear from the audience in the chat box, and we'll pick up a few questions from there as well. But a very warm welcome to our audience. Thank you so much for joining on a Friday evening. We'd like to kind of get started. I'm going to request Ravi and Shivi for a couple of minutes to just offer some perspective, overarching kind of perspective on this whole theme of how to make cultural festivals work. Some initial thoughts, because we're hoping to leave with this with some very practical insight of what works and what doesn't work, right? And the ground rules are clearly changing, which is why this conversation is important. Ravi, do you want to go first? Just some broad brush comments.
Sure. Thanks, Indrajit. So, in this space since 2000, I've had an occasion to engage with government through the Bangalore Agenda Task Force and other things. And I would say the first decade, 2000 to 2010, was more in the nature of trying to work on the hard infrastructure, roads, property tax, etc. What I realized very quickly doing this work called pro bono is cycle times and government are very long. You don't see, you see more failures than success. I'm a self-described patron saint of lost causes. So sometime around 2011, I pivoted to saying that let me work on areas that I'm more in control of. While I continue to work with the government on the very, very wicked problems, I said the arts and culture space is a space that it's possible to do something. So really around 2011, 2012, I became part of two initiatives. One was the Bangalore International Center, and the other one was the Bangalore Literature Festival, which is the focus of today's talk. And my role really, where I was coming to it, is the shrinking public spaces for informed conversation, arts and culture. In our cities, we're getting increasingly polarized, and conversation in safe spaces are getting shrunk by the day. So the idea really was, can we create relatively safe spaces, inclusive, accessible spaces? And both these initiatives came from that, the BIC as well as the Bangalore LitFest. And the other interesting thing that came in the Bangalore LitFest, which we can talk about later, while in year one, we tried to go for the traditional model of a corporate funding, it fell through with 2 weeks to go, and we had to pivot to a crowdsourced model. So we have become, in 13 years, we have raised close to 20 crores in running the Bangalore LitFest from the community. So I'll stop here. And then the Bangalore Habba was another initiative which was year two this year for 16 days, 500 plus events, most of them free to attend. The idea really was that, look, we are known for the wrong reasons, garbage, traffic, air, whatever, water. So can we brand ourselves for the right reasons, and could it be around arts and culture? So that's really been the initiative, Indrajit.
Terrific, terrific. Thank you so much for that, because it sets a good context. Shivi, I just wanted to come to you. You've had a fairly long run at HF. It's a bit of a tongue twist, and now with MAMI and the Mumbai, and you've encountered some serious challenges, and I'm sure you'd like to just set context in terms of
Yeah.
what that journey has
See,
been.
as far as the Film Heritage Foundation is concerned, we started way back in 2014 when I was really in the peak of my filmmaking career. And it was a very difficult kind of a thing, because when you talk about film heritage, um, you talk about almost a country which is producing over 2,000 films, over in 50 languages, almost six film industries, major film industries, and very little understanding of what is film heritage. And film heritage is not just popular cinema. But when you say film heritage, it could mean films of ISRO, Steel Authority of India, or the independent movement. And in fact, the big challenge for me was one of the biggest challenges, I would say, that when I was called, how I started doing this was an interesting story to understand, because that really understands the mindset of what you're dealing with. I was called by the BNHS, Bombay Natural History Society, um, that there are some films of Dr. Salim Ali, who's an ornithologist. Uh, we want some Bollywood guys to look at this because this is film. And I said, what has Bollywood got to do with? No, these are films. So I said, but this is films. I know it's films, but what has Bollywood got to do with it? Your board has every big industrialist in the thing. And finally, it was really sad that nobody got together to digitize those films. It was digitized by a British museum, and we worked on those films. We sort of worked, and that was my first big challenge. That I knew that film heritage had to be recognized as an art form, and to make people understand that film heritage doesn't mean a popular Hindi cinema which is playing. Film is a medium. A celluloid is a medium, which is exactly like a mobile or a digital camera today. You could use it for anything. You could use it for your plant or what. So that was one challenge with the foundation, which I had to rebuild right from the scratch. And MAMI, when I took over MAMI, um, the big challenge was that it was an organization which had no support of the government. It was almost a body which uh, went through different hands. It was a trust. It was a Bombay Charitable Trust, but it was had a geo in its structure, and in one point. Now it's we just revamping MAMI. We're just trying to figure out MAMI in the thing in a very challenging, because uh, we want to now talk about independent cinema. We want to talk about the cinema of today, and especially so those are really challenging terms, because in a country which you have for a book launch a Bollywood superstar who has never read that book. You can just imagine, for a film festival, people are obsessed with getting Bollywood, Tollywood, Collywood, whatever you can call it. Um, and I'm very glad that we started the foundation, and we are today a global entity in these 10 years to do what we really believed in doing. I think the same we would apply for MAMI is to is through go fight this difficult terrain and remain independent, and hope that we can bring really the best of cinema for not only the global but Indian cinema to the audience in Mumbai, and make it a very global festival. So that's the real challenge.
Terrific. I kind of dive straight into the theme that Shivi, you've kind of surfaced, which is about not getting limited in the way that we define cinema. One is the overhang of Bollywood, and to try and kind of keep it independent and inclusive,
Yeah.
as well as find an answer to make it sustainable as well. And you spoke about how you're thinking about reinventing MAMI, and I'll come to Ravi after that. All these three vectors, how does one rethink the model? How are you kind of imagining how these three things will converge?
I think the important challenge is always the leadership in how you lead and how do you view your vision in thinking about how you want to make those changes. Because I was, like I said, I was very shocked when I heard not only from BNHS, but my first other job was when Shyam Benegal called me for doing something at the films division, because he said he's making a documentary on Nehru and some of the freedom movement footage is not really restored. And can we do something? I mean, so that he can use that footage. And that is when it struck me that what I needed to do is first educate people on the importance of film heritage and also make them realize the difference of what film heritage actually means, that it's an art movement. And I must say, Tata Trust really came on board very quickly because had it not been for the effort of Tata Trust to recognize this as an art form. So you need people to find support with, who see the vision which you have and see how it sort of affects in the larger sort of role. I mean, the fact that the BNHS could not muster with all their credentials, and even the Indian government at that point were not so because Shyam Benegal got this answer: when you've got Richard Antibrose Gandhi, why do you need the actual footage? And that's when you start thinking where the heritage is sort of moving to.
Jesus.
So it was almost starting from scratch, Indrajit.
Right.
It was
Right.
starting from scratch. We started our workshops. We started doing what is called talking about heritage, talking about different things. And I'm glad that today film preservation is spoken in India and in the world. Film Heritage Foundation has played such a massive role in not only in India but in the subcontinent. And that you've got to continue fighting that out. You've got to
So,
continue doing that work. Yeah.
So, Shivi, you talked about two important things. One is source of funding, which is in your case was about philanthropic capital.
Yeah.
You also spoke about building the ecosystem, which is about building the capabilities that are required to make this movement succeed. I'm describing it as a
Yeah.
movement because that's what it was. You were building through your inspiring leadership in some ways and the support of Mr. Benegal and others. Ravi, I just wanted to come to you on this because you didn't look at necessarily, I know you said that it was serendipitous for you, the pivot towards individual funding. Are you convinced that that's really the most sustainable way to do it now? Or do you still believe that a hybrid model needs to be looked at, CSR funding, or are enough individuals now engaged for you to be able to sustain?
So I would say that, what we have, the Friends of BLF. So it started with 20 people in year one, and today we have about 140 people who contribute between 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. The Literature Festival costs us about 2.5 crores. And the basic fulcrum, the people around which we collect are the Friends of BLF, who come up with close to about 1.8 to 2 crores of this. So it continues to remain central to our model, this brandless festival. And it's also peculiar because I think Bangalore is only city which we can pull this off. I am not sure, I know it's a generalization, whether Bombay, Delhi, Chennai, whether they would come forward in the manner that Bangalore HNIs come forward to do this. And it's not big sums. In fact, there was a donor, I had a half an hour chat, and she asked me, how much do you want? At the end of it, I said 1 lakh. And she said, you wasted half an hour of mine. I mean, billionaire many times over for 1 lakh. I said, look, building credibility is very important. You don't know me. Somebody told you to take this call, you took the call. So you need to come along for the ride and then go ahead. And that person this year has given 7.5 lakhs. So over a
Wow.
period of time. And the second thing in this model really is no one person calls the shots. We make it a point not to take more than 5% for sure. Most people donation is below 3% of the total budget, and no one individual is more than 5%. So I think that this model has legs, point number one, and it's very helpful in being able to program, especially in these polarized times between left, right, ideology, all kinds of stuff. To be able to find that middle ground and survive year on year is possible. We saw what happened in the Mumbai Lit Live, where a sponsor pulled out with just some limited time to go. But the hybrid also has a space. So what we this year we tried is we went to some of the CSR companies and made the case as to why this would fit under CSR. And the preliminary results are reasonably encouraging. And the interesting thing is they want to give the money quietly because they don't want to be in your face, which suits us also. That is, if they give money and they're one of the sponsors with 3, 4 or 4 CSR companies, there is safety in numbers. So that works for us. We want to be a brandless festival. We want to be a community festival. We consider ourselves a college festival on steroids. So that's really the way we go about it. So to answer your question, crowdfunding as the core kernel in year 13 continues to work. And there is a place to slowly start evangelizing the idea among CSR companies. Indrajit? I think Indrajit, we have lost.
Yeah. No. So I think I lost connectivity back here.
Yeah.
But I think I'm back. So I'll
We can hear you. We can hear you. Yeah. So Indrajit, will you? Otherwise, I can. Sunil Malhotra talks about the distinction between crowd and community funding. Ours is clearly a community-funded model. There are individuals identified who are giving. We are not going for small tickets, retail, as a crowdfunding source consciously, purely because of the effort involved in that. So that's the only reason. Maybe we'll have to go to that once we have gaps in our overall funding.
Got it. No, that's that. Appreciate that, Ravi. I'm sorry I lost connectivity for a little bit, but the point that when I kind of shared your journey and the story that we published in Founding Fuel, one of the reactions from one of the organizers, and I since it was a off-the-record conversation, was that they've got feedback that brandless festivals lack credibility for some reason. Now, I don't know why anyone would jump to that conclusion.
I disagree completely. In fact, the fact that we are brandless community basically run by volunteers, the core group which works on this, none of us get paid. So we are really, it's so fully volunteer energy and it's a lot of heart. Obviously, money is required and we need to raise the money from individuals. You broad base the collection, I think credibility will increase. You have one sponsor who basically more or less takes 50% and gives you crores of rupees. You have to dance to that person's tune. And therefore, in fact, if anything, you will lack credibility if you take too much money from an individual. So I would actually disagree with that.
Fair point. They also know that it's not sustainable. They in the same breath, they say that. But they're saying that we're holding on to those corporate sponsors who are with us for the moment. We don't know what the future holds, which is why I encourage them to come and attend this. But I don't know if they have. But Shivendra, has your experience been similar in terms of when you work with both individuals and corporates? Has something fundamentally changed in the way corporates look at sponsorship of cultural festivals?
I would just say about, we had a blank slate, absolutely, because people didn't even understand what film preservation was. So there was no question of any sponsorship really at the beginning. But where it changed is through a grant which Tata Trust gave us. And they were the first people to sort of recognize both that, especially with Deepika Surabji, really at the beginning, when she was the head of arts and culture, That film is a very important cultural entity, and you've got to support that. And then, of course, Ratan Tata himself, whom I had a conversation with, and he felt really the necessity. But apart from that, the sponsorships or people who want to donate are people who are more attracted to, if there is a big celebrity coming in or the big glamour coming in. Uh, if the festival opens with maybe a big superstars films, that's always, nothing has changed in that.
What is this mindset about, to your mind? Have you understood it? I mean, you've had a long journey, so.
Yeah. Um, I think the mindset hasn't changed. In fact, it's got worse. It's absolutely got worse, I would say it. And it's getting worse because as you can see, all over us, every festival, it's so dominated by Bollywood. It's so dominated. Um, so we have to rely. So my initial funding, very interesting, and I'm as you are I can tell you about Bangalore as Ravi is from Bangalore. Just imagine a film Ghata Shraddha by Girish Kasarwadi. A man called George Lucas sees the film and says, let's restore this film and let's do it, when he doesn't have any funding which is coming in from India. Or a Thump of Arvindan, which is a Malayalam film, Martin Scorsese sees it and says, it's a beautiful film. Can we restore that? So I've been, a large part of support has come in from some of the greatest filmmakers in the world. And what has been so difficult is that when they said, there was a case, I can give you an example, when Martin Scorsese said to one of the producers, like, can I just restore it? He couldn't understand. He says, what will I get for it? He says, I don't want anything. I just want to give you the money to restore it. So he said, if you want to restore it, I want 1 crore. So Martin Scorsese said that, listen, I'm just giving you the entire money for the restoration. I just want to restore it. But we had to work towards that kind of understanding to make people understand the importance of restoration. So we've had a very challenging, Indrajit, it's not been an easy. Now we're setting up a archive um, in Mumbai. We're trying to create that archive. It's been very challenging. There have been members of the film industry who have been supporting this, but there is no systemized way of support which you have. Uh, Even in MAMI, we had Geo as the main supporter before I took over. This is much before they took over,
Yes.
but they took the branding of Geo.
Yeah.
Which to me was, when I've come now, I just think that the institution should remain as an institution. And the moment you set those targets for yourself, and you set about independent cinema, and you say that is what is going to be the focus, that is when the corporate structures or the supporters start getting uncomfortable.
No, this is a fairly important part, and both of you are saying more or less the same thing, which is that how do you preserve the independence? And I think you also spoke about inclusivity, which is something that both of you have been able to graft into the work that you've done at the LitFest, Bangalore LitFest, as well as at MAMI as well, and the Heritage Foundation. So we'll kind of break to look at some questions that had come in, and the first one, Ravi, is for you, which is from a dear friend from Founding Fuel, and someone you might be familiar with, KL Mukesh. And he's asking, setting up BIC, which is the Bangalore International Center, and the LitFest, and now the BLR Hubba, would require working with the government. Challenging, to put it mildly, he says. How do you do it? What keeps you going?
Yeah. So the basic thing is, I have worked with government since 2000, so I have a certain credibility in that system as an individual. And I have leveraged that for BIC, for Bangalore Lit Fest, as well as for the Hubba. So, for instance, the recent Hubba, which we ran, the government's message to us was quite clear. We will give you the permissions that you require to run the Bangalore Haba, but don't ask us for money. You find the money, run it. We will enable it through permissions. And it's really an experiment in government as an enabler. What has happened? For example, Freedom Park. It was a park we restored during our Bangalore Agenda Task Force days in 2003, 2004. For the first time in 20 years, we had 38 music gigs over 16 days at the Freedom Park. Otherwise, it was just a locked park for walkers in the morning and protesters on the outside. So we managed to show what is possible in the city center, and all these gigs are free to attend. So whether you're a vegetable vendor, driver, it really doesn't matter. All sections of society. And if you do sufficient Kannada programming, they come. And on an average day, we used to get between 1,000 to 1,500 people per day for these open festivals. So the government's outlook has been, use me more for permissions and less for hard money. But that said, on their own, they came and said, we'll start the Namma Jatre on day one, which was 50 folk art forms of Karnataka. They spent the money, brought 500 dancers, and launched the Habba. We didn't ask them. On their own, they said, these guys are doing so much, let's do our own bit. And so consequently, government, for example, doing a place like BIC, getting permissions and clearances, occupancy certificate, stands, bribes are very, very difficult. But we managed to do that in BIC in terms of, and similarly for the Bangalore LitFest. So government's role in these areas needs to increasingly be an enabler. They shouldn't be the 800-pound gorilla trying to do arts and culture.
What happens if they do?
Then you have a very different political look to the whole thing. It's a dais. It has a, I'm not really talking about the aesthetics, and I'm not talking about it as an elitist thing.
Sure.
What I've realized is, for example, when we run the Bangalore LitFest, 20% of our programming is Bhasha. I mean, and it's predominantly Kannada, but it also has Malayalam, Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, and the rest. More than around 20 to 25% of our programming. The same festival, when it is done by government, it's an out-and-out Kannada festival, which then precludes many people who don't understand Kannada to be able to engage with it. While we try for crossover audiences, Kannada authors writing in English, translations, stuff like that, to try and make it more inclusive. So the government model does exist. I mean, they run the Dashara, they run the Sahitya Academy festival every year. There's lots of politics involved with it. And they get large numbers. So don't get me wrong, but it is not the same thing. These are different offerings. And according to me, we all need to coexist. What the government does, what we do with government permission, what we do on our own, all that needs to coexist.
No, this is terrific. Shivi, I wanted to come to you because I think there's some questions on chat that are coming up. Karun has been asking about whether we should exclude companies or is there a role that they can play in part funding, maybe not decide programming and curb independence. And I think Sandeep Asulkar, who's again a dear friend of Founding Fuel and an investment banker, is asking if there are anonymous CSR donations rather than sponsorships that might do the trick. Have you had some experience? You have looked at it.
So being a non-for-profit and as far as the foundation is concerned, our biggest challenge always was to explain, even in CSR, most of CSR, and I want to be very honest with you, most of CSR is significant, very little to arts.
Right.
It's to do with what, and mostly it's to their own companies in different forms. I want to be honest and absolutely honest with them. I've always struggled to talk to people, even if you're doing great programming or you're doing great stuff, or I could not find a single person who wanted to donate for Gandhi's actual Dandi March footage.
What's the pushback?
So nobody wanted to give the money because it was not cool. They'd rather give it for a Sholay or a thing, but for Gandhi's own Dandi March, it was Sham Benegal. We tried our level best to talk to so many industrialists, so many other things. They said, it's a great thing you're doing, it's wonderful, carry on, but a CSR doesn't give you that. A CSR doesn't give you that. They'll come with those kind of answers. And it will only relate to the CSR talks about the usual mandates which each one talks about, And then each company has got their own CSR, which is dealing with that. So the money is routed through there only. So finally, very few, I would say, when I've had, but I've had programs trying to sponsor things. But then they really want too many things for that. And I've had bad experiences.
Like, for instance, give us a few.
I don't want to talk about the companies, but I can just say that there have been cases where we've had, where we do very important events. So our thing is all about the event, all about, then it becomes that we want to meet him, we want to do this, we want to do that. So invariably, there is a tendency to get very pushed on sponsorship. Sponsorship is, according to me, it's very centric to what you're giving back. And that's what I love about Scorsese or Lucas or Wes Anderson.
They don't add conditions.
What I love about them is that they look at it as a grant. I think people have to understand the difference between a grant and a sponsorship. And it's better for organizations like us to get a grant than to get a sponsorship, because sponsorship can be very entailing.
Great. Ravi, you wanted to jump in? You're frozen, I think, Ravi. We just wait for his... Ravi, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah. So I hope you can hear me, because my internet seems to be a bit weak.
Yes. But I can hear you. Yes.
Three quick points. From 4-5 years ago, the Bill Gates Foundation, they have the Giving Pledge. Yes. And they had a day-long conference in Bangalore. Yes. And three of us, the Museum of Art and Photography, the Science Gallery, and BIC, we each got 3 minutes to make our pitch in a whole day conference, which is all poverty, education, health, all the things which clearly are big problems. They managed to just carve this much space. And I remember telling them that we could do with a change. And in case even that is difficult, our events are all free to attend, and you're welcome to attend. If you don't, so, basically you have to, that is one. On the Gandhiji thing, I want to just mention, because the BIC model, the LitFest model, the Bangalore Hubba model, on my forehead is written the free. I believe strongly that free makes things accessible. And I remember, again, 5 years ago when we opened BIC, Shubha Mudgal, Anish and team had come for 2 days of Gandhi Jayanti songs. When she heard our model that we are free to the public, she said, Anish and I won't charge you. He said, pay my fellow artists, because for them it's a living, but we don't need it. So people at an artist level reciprocate, saying when they see what your model is, they are willing to reciprocate about that. Quickly, since I have the thing, I was just saying Pranav's question about children.
Yes.
Take that.
Yes.
We believe heavily.
The question is really about how the LitFest was organized and how to create space for children and families.
Yeah. So for us, this was from the beginning. Yeah. We are a bunch of people who are thinking of clickbaity titles, thinking of getting heavyweights for the opening session. For example, one year we had Rahul Dravid. Yeah. And you can say, what has Rahul Dravid got to do with literature? But his session, 1,200 people were there 1 hour in advance. What it does is, after his session is over, these 1,200 people say, shucks, I've already come here. They never intended to come for the LitFest. Let me walk around and consume what is happening in this place. And some of them choose to stay for 3-4 hours. So you end up actually getting new audiences who would never have got out of bed for the LitFest. In a similar vein, for us this year, for example, we had 8 stages. 5 were for adults and 3 were for children. And for us, children is very, very central to our programming, because that's how you bring the millennial parents out, the 40 to 50-year-old parents out, because there's something for their kids to do while they can consume what they want. So this whole thing of getting children's programming is really to draw in more and more audience, because our success determinant is the more and more people we can expose to these fields, the better is our success rate. Hopefully, some of them will go buy books, some of them will develop a reading habit, somebody will research somebody. That's the hope.
Yeah. No, this is a very important point that we wanted to kind of unpack a bit more, which is about programming as well as audience development, because being able to, you're competing against, in some ways, IPL, popular sports, or Bollywood, as Shivendra was alluding to. So, how does one think about programming in a contemporary sort of way? I know some of these are niche events as well, particularly some of the regional cinema work that you do, Shivi, or for that matter, Kannada audiences. We have an elitist mindset, English speaking, and all of that. How does one have to rethink programming and make it a lot more inclusive? And how do you kind of do that? Because it's not going to
No,
happen
I
overnight.
think we at the foundation balance it out very well, because to us the whole role of an archive is any cinema which has been seen by people. We don't make a judgment on that. We don't. But only thing which we really do is that every part of the country, whichever was a filmmaking nation, we are able to contribute from there. So we have restored a film, Ishanu, which was a Manipuri film. We restored an Odia film, Maya Mriga, a Kannada, Malayalam, Hindi. So Bengali, we are working on a Bengali film. So we try and look for films from all over the region and not centric. Then at the same time, we do our big, uh, we started during COVID. One of the most interesting concepts is Bachchan Back to the Beginning, which is now a retrospective of big stars. Uh, and then that was the best way to make people aware of film heritage and to understand and bring back the classic cinema back into the theaters. Today, one of the reasons why classic cinema is so back is that we started it all off, whether it was Bachchan Back to the Beginning, or whether it was Dilip Kumar's films, the Devanand or Raj Kapoor, the festivals we do. So I think the balance is very key. But when I say balance, it's almost natural for us that any cinema which is seen, we're able to touch upon all those portals, whether it's the independent cinema, or whether in MAMI, we started the opening film with Payal Kapadia's film, which was not the case. Always it was a big Hollywood film or a big film of Europe, but we said we need to celebrate an Indian filmmaker who's achieved well before, um, we had decided it well before anybody else had decided it in India. So it was all, fixed, and it was launched. So I think the importance is how you are able to curate through various norms and the various ways of doing things and still keep it relevant. And the challenges are going to be there irrespective of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted to kind of look at another parallel, and I think Nagraj Prabhu, who's the partner at SVP India, asks that we've always had fairly dismal success rates with Indian classical music and dance festivals, even more difficult when artists are not A1 veterans performing. Are we missing a trick or two? This is a question for both of you, if you'd like to take a stab at it, any one of you or both of you.
The thing is, when you talk about programming, if I talk in the context of the LitFest,
Yeah,
before I go
yeah,
to your
yeah,
classical dance
yeah, yeah,
question,
yeah.
is there's a lot of outrage year on year. We get, and because of this left-right business, everybody looks at it with polarized lens. The right, if you get somebody from the right, they say this is not right enough, and if it's from the left, they say this is too left. So there is no middle ground, and this is a constant
Right,
problem.
right.
In all this, Indrajit, our philosophy of the core team, that 2, 3 of us who actually finally do who will be the headliner, what will be the events, and whom do we say no to, we have some rules. We say anybody who foments hate on social media cannot come. I'm not getting into names, but there has been suggestions to include some people who foment hate on social media. We said that's an absolute no-no. Sexual harassment, even if the case is yet to be decided, and you could go as the petitioner, you could be there as the accused, it doesn't matter. We're saying, boss, let the system resolve itself, then we will call them. So that is basically programming. There was a question about the headliner act. Like last year, we had Abraham Verghese. We had Pico Iyer before that. That headliner for us is very important. and it is not from pressure from the publisher, it is all our internal tension. Will this person get 800 to 1,000 people in? That's our criteria, honestly speaking. And this year we had a mix of two, three people saying across these two, three, because we didn't have one heavy hitter in the morning. I mean, we said between these two, three, I think we should be okay. One starts at 10, one starts at 10:15. This is not at all pressurized by the publishers. The interesting thing about BLF is we owe the publishers nothing. We are actually doing them a favor by showcasing their books. So they are normally asking, how can you get this author? I will pay for this author, but will you get him? The moment they say they're ready to pay, we are looking at it more critically, that maybe it's not a fit, because we are not desperate for that money. So, but programming is a continuous challenge in terms of this thing. Charles has asked, how do you survive in a world leaning to the right? I think the only way, Charles, really is by being honest, because being authentic, being honest comes through in the selections that you make. In 13 years, I mean, we had a founder who left us about 8 years ago, and he chose to leave it. Though this does still say that he was asked to go, he was not. But we did have, what should I say, a life-defining moment. But our policy was very simple, that you could be the founder of the institution, but if you put the institution at risk, you walk, or you choose to step aside. If I put the institution at risk, they say tomorrow there's something against me, I have to walk, because the institution is more important than any individual, whatever be their responsibility in bringing the festival to the stage it is today. That doesn't give you the right to be irresponsible vis-a-vis the institution. So we have had problems of that kind. Coming to classical, etc., what we have seen from the BIC, we have actually, for example, fusion music, which is a mix of classical, rock, and stuff like that. We increasingly need to craft sessions of that kind if you want the youngsters to come in. It's extremely critical in this. I have now become there are people who tap me. I've done 2 Zenzi videos where I talk in Zenzi language and say, come for the Habba, come for the LitFest. And strangers are stopping me and saying, you're the Zenzi uncle. I'm happy because the purpose is served. I mean, the worst thing that can happen to a LitFest or a Habba or a BIC is nobody recognizes you exist. That's really how I see it. But I really feel we have, the classical purists, for example, we had TM Krishna with the Jogappas at the Habba. And 600 people turned up in the rain with umbrellas. It was raining during the concert. But still 600, obviously may not have been purists out there because the purists don't like him. But there's another audience which believes that what he is doing is the right thing. So there is no black and white answer. So you try to bring everybody. I mean, we open the festival with TM Krishna, we close the festival with Sanjay Subramaniam. So you try to balance. That's really the thing.
Very interesting. Shivi, I wanted to come to you. I mean, you look at Gunidas today, many of the seats go vacant. It's tragic because, I mean, it's had a tremendous reputation all these years at the Nehru Center. So how do you kind of look at programming of the kind that Ravi was talking about to ensure that you are relevant to the new generation?
Well, we've never had a problem. We've never had a problem with the crowd. We've always had over 1,000 people coming. All our events, and in fact, whether it was even the PVR Bachchan or any of the theaters, you had even as old as a film like Devdas of Dilip Kumar, it was packed. So we've never had a problem of that crowd. I think what is important is again the curation. How you curate the programming you do, what you show. And if you're confident and if you're, like what Ravi said, you're honest to your work, people will come. You should not change your perception or the perception of what your institution stands for to cater to something which the institution doesn't believe in. I think you just have to the only way of success is the element of belief, honesty, and bringing in ethics into your play. The rest you have to leave it to the fact. And if people don't understand that, so be it. You just keep going. Sometime they will,
Got it.
And I agree with Shivi totally. Integrity of purpose, and it's between you and the mirror finally, because people will say nasty things. But you can't go tapping around people saying, I've got good intention of heart, don't say this about me. It comes with the territory that people will say that whatever they will say.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Indrajit,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
can I take your
yeah.
leave? Because I have to rush
I
for a
have just one
meeting.
last, I'm going to just ask one last question to you and then
Yeah,
let you go.
yeah,
There is something from Anand Vardraj in
right.
Bangalore. He runs the International Short Film Festival.
I
He's the
know.
founder there. You know him. So he's asking, you've built a movement with digitizing celluloid cinema. How, as people who love cinema, how can they join you to digitize regional cinema and take the movement forward? I think it's a
I
admirable
mean, this is a
purpose.
very long, I mean,
Sure, sure. Just
nothing. They can
maybe
just
a
write a
question.
mail to me.
Okay, okay. We'll connect him. We'll
Yeah, yeah.
connect him.
As simple as that. I'm always there for anyone who wants to do something. Um, but it's a people's movement. So I always tell people, none of the organizations like these can function. I keep saying the people have to also contribute themselves to it, because we came with nothing to start these institutions. We had nothing. We just had a thought, and we had the vision, and we just put in a lot of hard work, and we just went and just kept doing it. So we need people with that kind of intention to join and to be part of it. It's open, because these organizations don't have any other way. It's meant for the people. It's our success is the people. So anybody who
Absolutely.
wants to be part of it, he's more than welcome, because the institution doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to the people.
So if it's okay, then Shivi will share yours and Ravi's email ID
Absolutely.
with people so that they can
Yeah,
be part of
sure.
this
Anytime.
movement. And we'll
Anytime.
certainly wish your dad. I mean, I know you've joined under a very difficult circumstances and
No, it's
appreciate
fine.
that. Thank you so much, and we'll certainly be in touch. We'll
Thank
carry
you,
on with
Ravi.
the
Thank you, Najib.
conversation. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks,
Bye.
Shivi.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah. So, Ravi, just to kind of carry on with the conversation, you heard a lot of stuff on you. You spoke about fusion, for instance, which
Yeah.
is trying to break the boundaries, not looking at purely from a purist kind of lens. What other innovations are you seeing around programming that might give us better clues on how to develop audiences for the future?
So some of the out-of-box ideas. See, first thing I mean, I remember when we had BIC back in 2005, 2010, we were multiple shades of gray. I mean, all old-timers, retired people, and one has consciously worked to take the audience downwards to the 30 plus, etc., which means you can't be the super intellectual BIC and say, I will not do children's programming. You do the children's programming so that the parents come. And you have to do those kind. So you have to apply your mind saying, what's your target? Who are the audience that you want to get in? And a thing like, for example, BIC, we do 500 events per year free, multiple genre. So one thing really is, because most of our places, the best place in BIC is just a 180 seater. If you do a bumper program there and the city lands up, not more than 180, 200 can get in. So it doesn't serve any purpose. So what I've found very useful is multiple genres, multiple events, something for everyone. You see, everyone doesn't have to like heritage or doesn't have to like mythology or like politics or geopolitics. So they pick and choose. We define success when I was at the BIC. Our success definition was in a month, out of the 40 events that we are doing, if you circle 3 events and say, I want to go for this, our job is done. We are not expecting you to land up for all the 40 events. We can't handle it. But the idea really is we are on the right track. If every show gets a certain minimum audience, is one way to look at it. And therefore, you think about these various. Another thing that I've been very fond of doing, I've not yet been able to pull it off. I really believe at sessions like this, and this could go for a Prithvi theater, it could go to the NCPA.
Yeah.
Actually, we need to leave 4 or 5 board badges. Talk to me about. And the talk to me about has maybe talk to me about Edgar Allan Poe, talk to me about the plays of Arthur Miller or whatever, which basically signals to strangers that you are open for. Because I personally believe what is not happening at pre-function areas of venues
Absolutely.
is strangers are not talking to each other. I
That's the
feel that
feedback.
should be
Yes,
added as another goal because
absolutely.
many of us have shared interests. The question then becomes, how do I develop this shared interest in a manner that I signal I'm okay to be spoken to? And some magic happens, and who knows, we form a group to go mountain trekking together, for all I know, because there are common interests. So I feel that venue organizers, event organizers need to think one of their goals has to be, how do I get stranger meetings? We're not a dating site. But how do I get strangers to talk to each other? So that is really, I feel, big thing that venues and organizers can do.
Brilliant, because this is something that surfaced when we asked one of our contributors and a very senior academic, Uma Narayan, to cover the mummy.
Yeah.
So one of the feedback that she kind of shared was that there wasn't enough of these conversations to stimulate and stoke conversations around a film because you don't have the context or the background, right? And people are dying to know more. But I guess because of budget limitations and the venue, there aren't safe spaces really which allow conversations to happen among strangers,
Strangers.
right? What stopped you? I mean, I heard you say that you've kind of still mulling over how to trigger it.
Hey, nothing. I'm no
Okay.
longer at BIC. I've told the current
Yes. Okay.
director. He's
Okay.
in principle for it. There's another public space that I'm doing. There we intend to do this because I know this idea has got legs.
Of course it has.
Connecting strangers definitely has legs. It's just
Absolutely.
that some subset of us need to work on it.
So, in what form and shape do you see it taking
So it will
off?
come like this. Let's say 15 minutes before an event, there will be this basket with a set of speak to me about. It can be blank where you write what you want to be spoken about, or there are some pre-printed ones. So you put the badge. So the
Yeah.
badge signals that I'm okay to talk to a stranger. It's not a porcupine thing saying stay away from me if you
Right.
don't know me.
Right.
And then somebody looks at what you want to talk about, and let's say they have a shared interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they talk to you about it. That's one.
Yeah.
Another thing which we should do for conversations, in my view, is a kind of a Hyde Park after the session. See, we tend to glorify the guys on the stage as panelists. And so we need to innovate. So I believe that after the session is over, let's say 60 minutes, 90 minutes, you give a Hyde Park box outside and let random guys stand up and say, I have a better point of view on the subject. Here. And even if four people listen to him, you are at least recognizing that the audience has as much intelligence, if not more, than the guys on the stage. Another innovation that is possible is, and we tried it, it works, but it just has to, you have to stay with it. Leave an empty chair on the stage. And for the guy who sends the most insightful question on the subject ahead of the event, gets to sit on the table for the last half an hour of the
We
discussion.
should try that. We should try that
Because we have
ourselves.
done that. It works. It
I'm
works.
sure it will. I'm sure it will. It's just that we had limited time. Otherwise, we could have tried it for this one itself. But this is brilliant suggestions. I'm just checking if there are more questions so that we can kind of move forward. But I think we've covered a fair bit of ground. Just give me a minute or so.
Yeah.
You spoke a bit about the organization that supports the Bangalore LitFest and what you've learned. Can we spend a little bit of time diving a little deeper in terms of why your college program didn't quite work and what you're doing now that ensures there's ownership and much deeper involvement from volunteers?
So earlier we used to actually take volunteers from colleges. And the problem is they just hang around as friends. All they care about is one certificate, which they'll attach to a US application or whatever. So there's a mismatch of objectives. Now, what we have done for the last 3 years that has worked very well for us, we invite volunteers. We typically get about 150 people showing interest. And we say at this time, land up here for a briefing. And we only work with the guys who land up. Anybody who gives excuse, I'm busy today, I'm busy tomorrow, it means there are problems. So we only, and this year, for example, we had about 35 volunteers that was culled from this 150 who land up. So I'm a believer that just because somebody is a volunteer, and the problem with volunteering is they think they're doing you a favor. But we want volunteers who are there for the right reasons, that they want to engage with authors, they want to help out at the festival. That is really the kind of volunteers. So we dropped the college model, saying going to wholesale to two colleges and bringing students. into a broad-based volunteer model across the city.
And you're getting participation, you said.
150 applications, and we got our 35, 40 very easily.
And those are the ones that land up.
They are the ones who land up. They take responsibility of authors, taking them to the stage, bringing them for book signing. Each of them is assigned a role.
So how do you kind of coordinate that activity, just so that we understand the...
So very simple. Actually, we are on our feet management. The core group of 3-4 of us on the fly. We don't have a SOP document. This is how we'll do it. Just from sheer experience. And we are able to recognize a good volunteer from a laggard volunteer, and we quickly axe the laggard volunteer because it otherwise acts as a drain. So our thing really is a more seat of the pants management by walking around and observing rather than too much of pre-planning, because the pre-planning goes more on the logistics of travel and stay, on the sessions, the titling, who will be the moderator, stuff like that.
That's right. And I also heard you talk about the management of both publishers and authors, because there is a bit of friction there sometimes, and sometimes too much control moves to the publisher and then they start running riot, right? I've seen that in quite a few festivals where the publishers start dominating the programming, not the organizers. How have you managed to kind of...
We have never had a problem. Actually, I must say, because of our model and the fact that, because we are the only one with this, community sourced model, they know that they have very little levers with us. I have nothing to do with the publishing world. Sri Krishna has nothing to do with the publishing world. Only Shiny, she's an author and editor and intersects with the publishing world. So the rest of the organizers, honestly, do not have anything. The Atagalata guy who helps the bookstore is in the field. So the rest of us, we owe nothing. That gives us a lot of strength to be able to call the shots. I am not dependent to be called for some festival. I don't want to go anywhere. So that really helps.
Very interesting. That's again plays back to the point about integrity of purpose that you spoke about. It instills that. I wanted to just focus on a few minutes on the BLR Habba, because that's a relatively new concept. And what are the things that we can learn from the way you've designed that experience? And I'm sure there are lots of people here. While we've shared the PDF, I'm not sure everyone would have got a chance to go through it in a crisply.
Very quickly, I'll tell you. So BLR Habba was over 16 days. We had over 500 events across 10 genres. And 90% of the events were free to attend. It was only workshop and a few other events that were chargeable. But all the events that we did was free to attend. It's so truly inclusive. So the genesis of this really was that, can we put up a thing on scale, just like Serendipity is there in Goa, or the Kochi Biennale is there, or the Carnatic music season is there in Chennai, or the Edinburgh Fringe, which of course is a huge festival. We said, can we do something that celebrates the city for people to experience? That was the genesis. But unlike the community-funded model, here we have gone to corporates and raised the money. So the BLR Habba this year was roughly about 8 crores to do these events. And we have raised it from companies who are happy to be quite invisible at the bottom line footer, saying that we are festival sponsors. So even if you go through our page, which has the sponsors, there are 4 festival sponsors and 3 event sponsors. And almost they flew below the radar. So none of their marketing guys sat on our heads and said, my brand needs to be bigger, Bangalore Habba needs to be reduced, etc. And we also punned around with the English word HUBBA. In Kannada, it's actually HABBA, Habba, as a festival, Utsav. But we consciously wanted something unique. And we said, Bangalore Habba, as Bangalore as a hub, not just for startups and new technology companies, but as a hub for arts, culture. For example, we laid a flag for a conference which I believe has legs to be a 3-4 day conference called the Futures Conference. So this year we had 6 eminent speakers speak about the future of public health, the future of human history, the future of toilets, the future of journalism. So we had people, future of sport. So we want to grow this into a much larger property in the years to come, where there will be intellectual conversations with the best and brightest, because Bangalore is associated with what the future can be. And we'll also have exhibitions which will have installations, AI, future fantastic kind of stuff, so that we can bring that. So our whole idea is, some of them may not work, but we are planting seeds, and the ones that work will hopefully flower into something major in the years to come.
Terrific. I mean, this sounds like a terrific idea. I'd encourage people to go through the PDF that we've shared with all of you, those who've registered and have joined on, some of you have joined on Zoom as well and YouTube, because I think I love the construct and the design of the Habba, and it's spread across the city, right? It's not
42
just a few
centers,
local.
42
Wow,
centers.
that's huge.
So we
And the
had Whitefield, we had Kengeri, we had everywhere.
logistics, not a challenge?
It is a challenge, but we had three premises. Something for everyone because we have 500 events, something near you because we have 42 locations, and accessible is free. These are our three premises on which the Habba is built.
Terrific. No, so on that note, Ravi, thank you so much for sharing a fair amount of thoughts and ideas. And what I'm taking away, and I'm sure the audience would have benefited enormously as well, is that there is you've thought about the purpose, you've figured out what are the pillars on which you kind of work, you've designed the organization, programming. A lot of thought has gone into it. Otherwise, you can't kind of rely on just seat of the pants stuff. So, and there are significant challenges. So, but before we kind of wrap up, I think we will, of course, share the recording of this conversation, hopefully by tomorrow. And we will also do a summary or a set of takeaways, which my extremely talented colleague Shweta Basrao will do sometime in the new year, because we're taking a short break.
Take the break.
Yes, we need that break. We've been going all out. We had a lovely session with Professor John Kay yesterday, and we were rather fortunate to have him. But I also wanted to quickly make a short spiel about something that we published today, which is the best of Founding Fuel. Some of our best stories through the year. Do take a look when you get a chance. And tomorrow we come back with the best of FF Life, which is our weekend section. So you've got enough material for the holiday season. I think you'll enjoy it. Some scintillating conversations, great stories, and something that we're really proud of in some ways. So, but thank you so much, Ravi. Thank the audience for being with us on a Friday evening. Do stay tuned. There is a newsletter that you can subscribe to. But before you leave, do just kind of leave us some feedback, even in a word, in terms of how this experience landed with you. It'll mean a lot to us. So on that